we had something like that. Now, ideally, your Azure home, if you haven't not worked on Azure, if you're a newbie, will not have this part. This recent resources that you have is more like a log, your activity log, like what you've recently opened and seen. So this will not be there with you. So this is going to be empty. So you can keep this open and parallelly just come up with DevOps. Okay, so in my new tab, I have DevOps. So this is my Azure DevOps, as you can see over here. This is Azure DevOps that I have over here. And this Azure DevOps portal is also going to be empty for you guys because you're going to be starting fresh. Okay. Now, I already have created the project, but before I actually show how, like what the steps are, I would like to show how we proceed with it. So what we do is we create a new project. Okay. Because I already have something, this create new project doesn't turn up automatically. If you open DevOps, Azure DevOps, it will straight away come up. Let's come up with a project name, let's say MLOps demo. You can keep a description like live session demo. Okay, and it's going to be a private project. Let's create this project. Okay, the new project is being created. The moment this new project is created, you are redirected to the page of the project, and this is the overview of the project. Okay, the overview of the project has the name of the project and some different components like what you need to add to it. So that will happen later on. The first thing that you need to do is establish an authorization connection. Every time you have different tasks. Now the CI pipeline, the continuous integration pipeline, let's forget CD for some time. Let's stick to CI, guys. So in CI, which is continuous integration, what we are doing or what we're trying to do is that we are trying to run a certain set of steps and that yield a particular pipeline which is up and running. Then that pipeline yields a model which is an ML algorithm. Okay, that model can be deployed. So the CD happens later. The CI pipeline is very important here. Okay, so what are the different steps which are going to be involved in that entire CI pipeline? So the first and foremost thing that you do is that to establish those jobs, there are going to be, we call these jobs. Okay, there are going to be parallel jobs which are going to be running. To allow that to happen, you need to establish a new service connection. So what you need to do is go to this project settings. Okay, at the bottom left, I'm hovering my mouse. I hope you can see that. So you go to project settings. And here you can see all the project details are there. It's your name, your description, everything is there. The administrator, the name of the organization you're a part of and everything, your login credentials. I mean, your ID basically, not your password. Don't worry. So you can delete the project as well, but don't do that. That will be harsh. So coming to the next part, we have the service connection point here. Okay, we are establishing a pipeline. We can create a new service connection. This service connection, okay, we'll just call it a create new service connection. We'll use the Azure Resource Manager. You could have also used Kubernetes, but I would recommend, since you're practicing hands-on for free subscriptions on Azure, it's recommended that you carry on with Azure Resource Manager. Kubernetes that sort of needs some payment that you need to do. So you selected the Resource Manager. You will go for the recommended service principal. Okay, this is going to authenticate all the steps that are going to be involved in your CI pipeline. You click on next. There are going to be, it's going to take some time. You're going to be having this page pop up wherein you need to provide your details, your email ID and your sign in and everything details will be given. Once that is done, you can create a service connection of a certain name. Let's call it service connection. And the moment you do it, you click on save, a new service connection is established. So I think I'll keep both the projects in parallel. I'll keep my actual project. Now this is the one which I'm creating on the other page. This is the one which I already have. So let me enter this. See, this is also how it looks like. On project settings, if I go to service connections, when you click on save over here, when you create, create the service connection, you will see a service connection like this. Okay, now I can separately create another service connection, but I don't need to do that because I already have one running. I've called it the test service, and the steps involved are exactly what I showed you earlier. Okay, now my service connection is established. Let's assume it's established. Let's go back to my the main project, basically my overview of the project. This is my overview of the project. Once this is done, I will now need to do code management. Please go back to, I'm not going to be showing it because let's test your memory power. Code management was the first thing mentioned on the block diagram. Okay, code management is what we start with. We've already written some code. Okay, I have my code on GitHub. Okay, this particular code is going to be incorporated with this. So I'll just go to repos over here. Okay, I can go to repos. And I need to create a new repository. There are different ways of doing it. I can either import it from GitHub, or I can have, push a direct repository from my local system into Azure. What I have done in my other project is I just imported this. So there is a link that is needed. So I'll just copy this link and I'll paste it there. If I paste it here, you see that I can import it. So then the importing will happen. You can see that the importing is taking place. Once the importing is done, this is how it's going to look like. Let me show you the repository which I already have for my main file. So this is the repository. You can see that we have the CLI commands, we have data, we have deployment, different stages. Okay, some of it is also used for you to actually, use it in your hands-on project. Okay, it's really interesting, guys. I think you'll love it. Okay, we have the repository imported from our, for our demo as well. This is our demo. Okay. So please note that when I'm on the left-hand side tab, closer to this, the web browser sign, you remember that it's on the project that we are doing now, and this is the one which I've already done. Okay. So if you compare, just take a look over here. This needs you to set up a build like a CI pipeline, whereas this has been succeeded already. So this repo has been used in a successful CI pipeline. That's self-sufficient to understand. Okay, moving on, the repository has been established, a service connection is up and running. Now let's go to the pipeline. This is the most important part when we need to create a new pipeline. Whereas in my main project, if I go to pipeline, I already have a pipeline which is running, which is my MLOps Iris CI. Okay, this is just the CI pipeline. So I'll be creating the pipeline. How do I create a pipeline? I'm going to be giving some jobs. Now, where is my code? Where is my code? My code is in, I'll have to use the classic editor. Okay, if I click on the classic editor, I see that it allows me to choose from one of these. It could be GitHub, it could be Subversion, it could be, different sources from which I connect. I'll go for Azure repository because I already have it here. So my demo is there and I'll call it MLOps demo. Okay, my repository is MLOps demo. If I look at the repository, okay, it's asking me to finish the task and then leave. Okay, fine. So my MLOps demo is basically the repository that I have established over here. Then I'll click on continue and then it asks me to create an empty job. Okay. The moment I create an empty job, there is going to be this setup that comes in. Okay. This is your CI pipeline name. Okay. It's going to be called MLOps demo CI. There are going to be the sources. What are the sources? It's MLOps demo. All this is there. And now the agent is going to run. Now there are going to be certain tasks which I'm going to be, allotting to it, for which I'll be using CLI commands. Okay, I'm going to be using the CLI commands. It is also possible that you do the coding on Python and then you use Python commands to actually execute it. For this live session, I'll be showing you this, the CLI commands. Okay, how does that happen? If you observe, in our CLI commands, there are going to be some variables that we'll be referring to. Okay, but these variables are not defined on my Azure cloud platform. So what do I do for that? So before I start, defining the steps, I need to go to the library. Okay, it's asking me to check. Okay, yeah. So guys, it's a very good practice if you want to save it. So just save it at each step. Just select the default folder and click save. Every time it's like save and proceeding. I think this applies to everything that you do on your computer. Anytime there is a system error, you can always go back to the previous saved version. Okay. Now this agent job is there. I can change the name to the MLOps CI pipeline. Whatever I do, that's not a problem. Sorry for the typo. Okay, it could be MLOps CI pipeline. There could be different ways of naming it. Let's keep it as agent job as of now. Then I go to the library part. Okay, it's saved. I go to the library. And now I can add a group of variables which I am going to be referring from my CLI commands. Now this group of variables, I won't show it to you over here. It's already there in my previously made model. You see that we have two different variable groups. One is for building, which is the CI pipeline. The other is for deploying, which is your CD pipeline. I'll come to the CI pipeline. Okay, this is my build. This is the variable group for building purpose. So when you have a new variable group established, you need to provide the name. And I always have a practice of, maintaining a description so that you always know what is happening. Okay. Now, these are the variables which we'll be using. Now, we have to have a target virtual machine, right? Everything that our, like the Anaconda environment was doing for our local system, there has to be a target virtual machine on Azure, which will do the same things for us. So for that, I need to establish a target machine. For that, it is going to be, what am I going to, how am I going to define it? I'm going to be defining a computer, a virtual computer. I'll call it Iris Compute. It's my target compute. There are default virtual machine sizes. I'll go for the standard one, okay, which comes with the free trial. I have it already. For how much time can I let the machine be idle? Okay, so let's call it, let's say 300 seconds. The maximum instances of this machine, or the maximum nodes that are going to be there, 1, minimum nodes will be 0, and the region and the resource group and workspace. So when you begin this project, guys, you will not have this workspace on your home. So if you come over here, you can see that Iris workspace is here. Now this Iris workspace can be created manually, of course, but even if you don't create it manually, the way I have designed the continuous integration pipeline, it will create it for us. And within the workspace, there will be a resource group, which I've called test RG. Okay, so when I enter the workspace, I'll see that the resource group present inside is test RG. You can see this over here. Okay. Anyway, coming back to the pre-existing pipeline, once all this is done, you save, and this variable group is established. The next thing that you need to do is define another variable. Okay, if I go back to the one which is happening, okay, now the variable group is established. Come back to the pipelines. Come to this CI pipeline and let's edit it. And that's how you're going to be redirected to this page. Okay. Every time you click on pipelines, guys, this pipeline which has been newly established, it will look like this. You click on that, it will ask you to run the pipeline, but there is nothing there inside. It's like you're asking somebody to run, but that person is like in water. It's floating in water. There's no land to run. So let's give the groundwork for that person to run. Let's go to edit. You need to just edit it, and then we again come back to the previous page. Now, let's say that our variables, if I come to the variables, I come to the variable groups and I can link the variable group. Okay. So if you see here, my MLOps Iris pipeline, okay, if I say edit, this is my entire pipeline, guys. I'm showing it to you for the first time. So these are all the jobs and tasks which are there. See, I've called it Iris Run. The agent job has been renamed as Iris Run. It has a pipeline. I've called it MLOps Iris CI. This variables has a variable group which is linked, which is my build variable, the ones that I just showed you. These are the variables, Iris build. These are the variables that we have. Okay, these variables have been shown and integrated with my pipeline. The CI pipeline, which I am going to be showing you right now, has these variable groups integrated. And now I am going to be defining a pipeline variable, which is the name of the experiment. I'll call it Iris experiment. So in MLOps, or basically in these continuous processes, you'll always see that the number of times you run the integration, pipeline, the number of times you establish a pipeline and run it, they are called runs. Okay. And in each run, there is going to be a set of experiments which are going to be conducted. So these experiments are going to be turned up as logs, like all the artifacts of these experiments is what we're going to be seeing. Okay. So the pipeline variable, these were already there. The system debug and everything was already there. It's just that the ML experiment name that I'm going to be creating is going to be Iris experiment. Now let me come back to the tasks. This is where the real fun starts, guys. I have been given the task to establish a CI pipeline. Okay. What are the different steps that are going to be involved? The first and foremost thing that I need to do is Python. I am going to be using Python, and which version of Python? 3.6. So I click on this add button, this plus sign that lets you add a task. Okay. If you see here, if I come to this task, there is no task over here. You click on add task, and what you do is, like over here, what we did, we said use Python. When I say use Python, this comes up, use Python version. Okay. You click on this add and this pops up with an X over here because they know that you're using Python 3, but which version of that? So it could be 3.8, 3.9. For this task, we have used 3.6. Okay. And the version that I've used is 3.6. The next step will be to install the requirements. Now, following back to what I had said earlier, guys, the particular task, the particular this model that I'm posting, or that I'm hosting basically is an Iris data set. Okay, I'm sure Those who worked with data science projects, you know what the iris data set is. Basically, there are certain biological, morphological features which are there for a particular, a flower called iris, and there are different species of that iris. It's versicolor, etc. There are different versions, and based on which species it is, the classification can be done. It's basically a classification task, and like I said earlier, we are using decision tree classifier for this. Okay. So what I do is I have certain requirements which need to be installed. So I install those requirements, okay, and there is a path which I've already established, okay. It's the environment setup installment requirements. The install, you can call it install the Python dependencies, install the requirements. There could be different ways in which you name this bash command, but remember that it's going to be a bash command. So how do you input the bash command? You go to this plus sign, it's already there, you just type bash. See that the bash has come in, and then you can add it. Okay, and then you can rename it. Now this is the basic two tasks which have been allotted to your CI pipeline. What is the next step? Once my model knows that it has to use Python, it's like, okay, sir, I'll do it. What do I need for this particular project? Okay, these are the files that you need for this project. Okay, done. What next? Now you need to connect to Azure Machine Learning. Azure Machine Learning is what you need to connect to, and for that you need a CLI command installation. Now, using this extension, the ML extension, you will be performing a lot of tasks in the subsequent steps. Okay, so you first need to establish a connection with this Azure CLI. Okay, so for that you have to authenticate it. How do I authenticate it? With the resource manager connection. What was the service connection that I made over there, guys? It was called test service. Okay. So for that, you need the CLI command. How do you establish the CLI command? You click on plus, obviously, and just type CLI, and you have Azure CLI over here. So now we'll be using only these three, like Python and Azure, and like the CLI and the bash commands precisely. Okay. Then when we switch to something else, I'll come back to this page. Okay. Now, we have the Azure CLI ML installation over here. We'll do that. We'll define our service connection. The one I'm using is test service. There is going to be an inline script, okay, and this inline script is going to be run as a part of the parallel job. Once that is done, I need to put the command. Okay, the CLI commands are present, by the way. This GitHub link will be shared with you. Okay, so the CLI commands, everything step by step, everything will be mentioned over there, so you can take a look. Okay. Once your connection with Azure ML has been established, you now come to creation of the workspace. Now you can either create the workspace. What is my workspace, by the way? If I come to variables, what is the workspace? If you look at this, the build variable, what is the workspace that I'm looking at? The workspace that I need is this iris workspace. This iris workspace will not be existent in your, home. The demo home. This is how your ML, your Microsoft Azure home looks like. But you will not have the iris workspace over here initially. But when you create this workspace, that is when you'll actually have it. Okay. Coming back to the tasks, you've created a workspace using the CLI command. Okay. If you are done with the workspace, what else do you need? You need this target virtual machine. This virtual machine that you need, there are going to be different specifications of this virtual machine. These are the specifications. I have given it a name. I have defined the maximum nodes, minimum nodes, the amount of time it's going to remain idle for, the standard, the VM size. Okay, the standard which is provided. Okay, this is what we have, and then you can create or use a pre-existing compute machine. Okay, again you have to use the CLI commands, and again you have to give the authentication through the test service connection which we created at the beginning. This part wraps up your, the code management part. Now your code has been managed. It is in safe hands. You have established a virtual machine for that as well. Fantastic. What was next in your that block diagram? The data management. Now I am using a simple iris CSV. Like if I show you the basic iris CSV, like how does it look like? It's like 4 columns: petal length, petal width, sepal length, sepal width. There are 150 odd rows, and you have the target variable like 0, 1, and 2 for the 3 different species that I'm detecting. Okay, so this data is going to be uploaded to this workspace into this resource group, and it is going to be a part of. Is anybody saying anything? Okay. Yeah. Now, if you have a particular the data that is there, the data is going to be uploaded to this particular blob storage, wherein all the versioning of the data can be done. You can observe the data as well. Everything will be shown right away when I show you the other ends. Okay. Now, when your model is trained, when your model is tested, there are going to be different scores which are generated. There are going to be different parameters which are generated, like how did the model perform, what are the different, there's going to be a lot of data which is going to be generated from the training of the model. That is going to be stored in a particular metadata and model folder which has all the artifacts of the training process. For that, again, you'll be needing a bash command, and using this CLI command, you'll be able to establish that folder. Okay, and everything, all the details of the model will be provided to you. Now that's how the whole process, that's what the whole process depends on. So we'll be seeing that as well. This wraps up the data management part. Now comes the model training part. Okay, this is the model training. Again, I'll have to refer to a CLI command, which is going to be your iris training CLI command. This iris training command is going to be, like, we'll be using this CLI command one more time. This CLI command is going to let you train your model on that particular data set. What we are using is a decision tree classifier, one more time for all of us. So this decision tree classifier is going to be trained on that iris data set. Whatever results and whatever artifacts we get as a result of that experiment are going to be published. Okay. If I want to use this model in the future, or what are the requirements for me as a company, if I want to see, if I want to approve this model to be used, I have to know about the model, I have to know about its profile, I have to know everything in and out about this model. Now, how do I actually do that? For that, I need to register the model. Okay. The model will be registered in my resource group. It is going to have all the data. And as you can see, the metadata model that we just created from this step, that is where all the details and all the artifacts are going to be generated. Okay. And the name of the model is decision tree. Okay. Like I've already mentioned, we're calling it iris decision tree classifier, and the model that I've used is a decision tree. Okay. Once all this is done, I have the consequences, I have all the results, everything, but I don't have a directory to, associate the path with. So the last step is to copy these files to a target directory, which is going to have the metadata, the environment setup, the deployment, everything is supposed to be there. These are the artifacts which are generated as a result of this experiment. Okay. So that copying the files to that particular directory is the penultimate stage, you can say. And then the last stage of this CI pipeline is you have to publish these artifacts. Okay. The name of the artifact is going to be iris classifier. We'll be needing this. We'll be needing this for our continuous deployment task. Okay. So when I go to that part, I'm going to be showing it to you. So these are all the steps which are included in your CI pipeline. A quick recap. You first tell your partner that, okay, I'm using Python as my language. Which version of Python? 3.6. Super. The next step is that, okay, you're using Python, but you are asking me to do a project for you, right? And you'll be like, yes, okay. So what do I need to do for that? So you'll be needing these things. What is the ammunition that you need to fight the war? You will be needing a sniper. You will be needing a knife. You'll be needing, there are so many different types of weapons that you can use. So these are the steps. These are the things that you'll be needing. So in requirements.txt, we know what that is. All the libraries and tools which are used in the project, they will be incorporated. Okay. So they will be installed, and now the virtual machine is prepared to fight the battle. You need to establish a connection with Azure ML. That will be done through the CLI commands. If you already have a workspace with the name that you've provided in your variable group, well and good. If not, you'll have to create one, and then you can use it. The same thing happens with your targeting compute. You have a target virtual machine. If you have a pre-existing virtual machine which still has some space left, you can maybe fit in one more pipeline with it, or maybe you have to. It's always a good practice to have independent stuff running, because the organizations have huge data set to work on, and therefore the performance of the model needs a lot of space and a lot of freedom to work with, if I want to put it in layman's language. Once the targeting, the virtual machine is established, you then come to the blob storage, wherein you are going to be uploading your data. You are going to be creating a particular folder wherein all the artifacts are stored. Okay. How do you generate these artifacts? These artifacts are generated from iris training. Okay, iris training basically for model training. Iris training because we're working on the iris data set. Once this is done, we are training our model, the decision tree classifier on this data set, and then we have some artifacts which are generated. We also have some details about the model which we'll be registering. Okay, and all these details are going to be copied to a particular directory, and then they're going to be published. As simple as that. Now, please remember that this is the CI pipeline that I have integrated for this project. A different project like a biomedical research project will have certain different. You would expect them to use like if the coding is done in Python and if you have some requirements, I think the first 3 steps will be the same. You may need the 4th step, 5th step as well. The upload data can happen through this iris CSV, or it can happen through a different database. So I'm assuming that the first few steps are going to be same. The training is going to be different. There could be some more steps involved. There could be lesser steps involved. We don't know. But these are like the fundamental steps that you need to follow. Okay. This wraps up your training, the CI pipeline. Now, when I come to my pipeline, when I click on this pipeline, just compare this. Assuming that all these, specifications or the tasks have been provided, you are going to be saving each time you add a task. There's a lot of typing that you need to do. So each time you're adding something, just save it and keep proceeding. Now you come to pipelines and just see this, that there is a round circle, there's an empty circle next to it, whereas this has a green tick, which means that this has been run successfully. This has never been run. No runs yet. It's mentioned over here. The last run over here has been mentioned. So when you click on this pipeline, let us click on both these pipelines. You see this page. This has all the logs of the previous runs, whereas there has been no run over here. I can click on run pipeline. So what I'll do is I'll click on run pipeline. And there are going to be different specifications. I'm going to be using Azure pipelines as the agent pool. What is the specification? I'm working on Ubuntu. So it's always recommended that, you do Ubuntu 20.0 for this, what I'm using. You have the master branch of your repository. You just click on run and you'll see that this starts running. The moment you click on run, you're going to be redirected to this page. The moment you click on run, this is where you're going to be redirected to. And now you have all the jobs, parallel jobs, which are executed. Just click on this and you'll see that gradually each step is going to be executed, and then you're going to be having these green ticks which indicate that this step has been executed successfully. You have all the logs mentioned over here. You have the time taken. Now there were some server issues from my end and some system issues from my end, which is why it took 28 minutes. It's a very small data set, guys, and it's not supposed to take so much time. It generally takes 10 to 15 minutes, and that's like a threshold. There were some issues in my system, which is why it took 28 minutes, nearly half an hour, but it runs successfully. Basically, the training took most of the time. Okay, so if you observe that I had asked it to use Python, so it is going to use Python. The next step that I had asked it to do was to install the requirements. It has installed the requirements. All these, we are familiar with this, right? Like we see this on our terminal day in, day out when we want to import or when we want to pip install something. The next was to connect it with Azure CLI. Azure ML, sorry, and the instance has been created. We've got a service principal and we've connected it with Azure Machine Learning Cloud. The next step was to create a workspace. So had I been to this place and had I typed iris demo, there would have been no workspace. But now if I type iris workspace, you see that this resource has come up. Okay, it's there on your activity log as well. Once that is done, there was a target compute machine which was to be established. That has been done. Okay, everything has been established. I've called it iris compute. I was supposed to upload the data. We had the iris data set. That has been done. The next step was to create the metadata, the folder on which all the artifacts will be stored. That has been done. Iris training has been done. As you can see, this is your iris training. Okay, this took quite some time. Okay, the iris training was done, and once it was done, we got the final results. This iris training process took most of the time in my case, but it shouldn't be because the data set is not too large. There was some server issue. Next step was to register the model. Okay, whatever model you've got, you're supposed to register the model. And once the model has been registered, you need to copy the files to a particular directory and then publish the artifacts. Once all of this is done, you will see that this is the registering the model. The model has been registered. We have used it in iris experiment. Okay, the model is named decision tree classifier. All these factors have been mentioned over here. Once all of this is done, you will need to publish the artifacts. This wraps up your CI pipeline. Now, what exactly is the benefit? Like, I am continuously telling you that everything, all the artifacts are stored, artifacts are stored. Where is it stored? If you come to your home page, you'll see this Iris workspace. Of course, whatever name you give to your workspace is going to be created. I click on this workspace, and now it redirects me to this page wherein I can click on the studio web URL, which is where all the artifacts are stored. You see, it takes me to a new page. Okay. Now this is where this run of the experiment has been shown. It says that it's completed and it gives you the date, the time, and everything has been mentioned. All the details of this experiment are going to be mentioned here. You can go to the experiments. You can see there is a whole log that's mentioned over here. You can just go to experiment and you can see all the factors here. See, one entire run has been completed. This is the experiment that I have. If I enter the experiment, I'll get to know the artifacts of that run. That one run that was created in July, on July 31st, the duration was basically this. The running, not the establishing of the pipeline and the entire running, it's just the running of the experiment that is shown over here. What is the ID? What is the script name? What is the service principal is what I've used. The compute target machine is Iris Compute. The different versions, the environments, and this is where the fun part is. Come to the metrics. The model metrics has been shown over here. Just look at this. I had kept 3 metrics: accuracy, precision, and recall, and it's 93%, which is quite good actually. Okay, these are the different metrics that I have. Okay, if I want to show just the precision, I'll have to untick accuracy and recall, and then I only have the precision. I get to see which one I want. Okay, I have a tabular format. You can see that there are tables also, and you can see that it's a chart format as well. I can download images now. When this experiment was conducted, we had the confusion matrix, okay, for the number of correct predictions that was made by our model. Okay, confusion matrix will look like this. There is some, the resolution is different, so that is why you won't be able to see the number. It's a very finite number. It's shown in a white dot. It's so large. So this is how the confusion matrix exists. You can always download it. Okay. Come to the child runs. There are no unique child runs to show that this is where the output is. See, everything has been mentioned over here. See, this is your df.head. It's like a log of the entire output. It shows your accuracy, which is 93%. It shows your df.head, which we do on our notebook, right? It shows you the first 5 rows, sepal length, sepal width, everything is mentioned over here. And then you can see all the logs over here. This is about the experiment. What about the model? We haven't spoken about the model. This model has been created. Let's go to the model. Okay. As you can see, the name of the model is Iris, and we have already established the model, which is your decision tree. Let's go to the model and see what we have. This model has been registered. This model has, what is the experiment on which this model was conducted? Everything has been mentioned over here. You will have the different versions of the model. This is the first version. So if you go back to the slide that I showed you, this is V1, which I have established in July. I'm expecting this to degrade with time, and then I have to come up with a V2, V3, V4, and that will happen with time, which is why it is important to have the date created on, very important. Okay. The tag, what model is this? Everything is very, very important. It's right there in front of you. Okay. So these are some of the features. You can have the data. You can take a look at the data set. This is your Iris data set. Okay. Like I said, it's a CSV file. It's a plain and simple CSV file. It's your Iris data set. You can also, let me just go back by one step. This is your data set. You can monitor your data set. Now, this is where the data drift will come into play. Let me briefly discuss this. I have already registered this data set. Okay. There is an option to create a data set monitoring preview. I can just click on create. It will ask me to choose a target data set. Okay, so there is definitely a new data set that has come up. I'm going to be choosing the target data set. I'll be selecting the baseline data set. What will I compare the new data set with? The previous data set. And then I'm going to have some monitoring settings. Okay, so there are fantastic articles on the internet wherein you can learn more about data drift. Ideally, what they do is that there is a threshold which is set. And if the data drifts by beyond that threshold, then you see that, the performance is degrading, and then you need to do some versioning of the data set. So that is precisely how you can tackle data drift. Okay, I just wanted to show you this. Okay, now these are all the features and all the artifacts that we have as a result of my CI pipeline. Okay, now what do I do with the CI pipeline? This is up and running. This is fine. Very good. Where is the CD pipeline? What do I do with the CD pipeline? Okay, let me show the deployment now. Again, you go to your dashboard. You see that there is a releases option. Now this model that has been created, you need to release it. So let's go to releases. You're not going to be seeing anything, guys. You won't be able to see anything. I have created certain releases of that model, and this is the release which has finally been uploaded on my which has been deployed. So you will have to give the choice. You'll be given a choice to create a release. So I think let's go to this releases, and you see that there were no pipelines found. So ideally, if you don't have a pipeline, you won't be able to create a release. Okay, so to be able to create a release, what will you release unless you don't have a pipeline? So for that, it's important that you have a pipeline. Okay, so if I click on create a release, it will tell me what do I want to create a release with. Now there is something known as user acceptance testing in software engineering, wherein basically before you push a model into deployment, before it's on deployment, you basically test it with real world data, which we've already done. Okay, let's assume that we've already done it with the Iris dataset. Then that can be pushed to the particular model. The deployment can be done. So I can click on this UAT, and this UAT is what I'm going to be pushing into with the deployment. And then I can click on create. I don't need to do that. I already have it. So let's go to the releases part. Okay. Now this is what you'll have. You will be given a choice. Let me show you the basics, the understanding. Now this is how it's going to look like. See, when you click on the create new release, this is how it's going to look like. These boxes will be empty. So you'll have to connect your CI pipeline. When you click here, you will be given a choice of certain pipelines. Now I've already connected the CI pipeline, so I can't change it. My project is my MLOps Iris. The pipeline, which is the source build pipeline, is going to be my MLOps CI pipeline, which I've already shown over here, this one. And the version that I'm going to be using is the latest one. However, I can specify it before time. So if you remember, I told you, if my latest version has a mega problem and it will take at least 2 days to debug it, I can go back to a previous version. And the source alias is going to be the MLOps Iris CI. The moment I click on this, this will be created. I can create these UAT and production tasks. It is going to be required for me to create a release. The moment I click on create a release, I'm going to be having a new release. I've created 5 releases. For those who are going to be starting, they're going to be having the first release. Okay. So I had done that, and then there were some changes which which were needed to be done. Once that was done, then I came up to the 4th release. Then when I clicked on create a release, I got the 5th release, and this is how it looked like. Okay. The moment you come here, you can, now this is giving me a choice to redeploy because I've already deployed it once. What you need to do is just deploy it once. Okay. So you just need to click on deploy. Now, just like we had parallel tasks for CI pipeline, we are now going to show you the tasks for the CD pipeline. Let's come back to the releases. Okay. So when you come to this part, you will be given a choice to add some tasks over here. You just need to click here. Again, like the previous slide, like the previous portal, you're going to be seeing that you can use Python as the language. You'll have a bash script which is going to be install the requirements. You can connect it with your Azure ML, and then you can deploy this model to your container. Okay. Once this is done, now there is a choice for you to conduct some smoke tests. There is a choice for you to publish the results of these tests and get an endpoint which you will be testing. These are actually mandatory steps. But for this particular live session, we have just shown you the deployment of the CD pipeline. This continuous deployment will happen once the continuous integration takes place. So every time you do some new integration in your model, you are going to be having this deployment mandatorily to be done. Okay, and then this model can be used as a part of your the project basically. So this is a rough idea of the CI/CD pipeline. There are approvals which are required to be granted. So if I come to this particular release, if I am the organizing team, if I click on the editing part, if I want to edit the release, if I want to click on edit the release, you can see that there is a choice of post deployment conditions. I can set some post deployment conditions. I've disabled everything as of now. There are pre-deployment conditions. Again, I've disabled everything as of now. So there is a choice for you to approve these before they are headed for production. Okay, so this is an entire overall, like, layout of how the deployment pipeline will look like, the cd pipeline. Okay, so this is a basic understanding of the CI/CD pipeline. Fine. I'll be heading back to my slide now. Okay. This was in relevance to your the diagram which I showed you earlier, this diagram. Okay, you can conduct smoke tests. There is data capture, like I showed you, the data which is uploaded. You can continuously feed data. Data monitoring can be done. I just showed you how you can test your sample data with the pre-existing data. Everything will be there, and you can proceed with the continuous deployment, and then continuous training and monitoring can happen. So for the free subscription, you can use Azure Resource Manager, and for that you can conduct the smoke tests as well. But for data capture and data drift, you will have to upgrade yourself to the Kubernetes. Okay. Now, a quick recap of what we have. We have the build variable group. It's very important for you to have the final build layout. This is how it's going to look like. Okay, the experiment name, the deploy variable groups. Okay, because by the end of this, your CI pipeline will be established. Then you'll have the deploy variable groups. Then you'll have the final deploy layout. Okay, so obviously you're going to be having the tasks running at the background, and then you will be having each task completed. If there is some error in it, then it will stop in between, and then you can see what the error is, and then you can troubleshoot, and then accordingly you can proceed. Okay, it's very important to create the service name. Okay, so what service name you're going to be defining it with? I've called it Iris API UAT. This is where your endpoint is going to be located, and your endpoint can be tested.